Well, hey there, and welcome to the attic of the dollhouse for another reading from Grimm's Complete or Fairy Tales. That's right. Hey, and if you've been here before, you know the score. We gotta set the mood straight before we dive in. Get their lights off. We gotta get that fire crackling element going there. Oh, there she be. All right, and you know what we do last of all? A little Suzuki crossharp on the key D. Suzuki Promaster 350. All right. All right, a little bit of working on something that I never played before. But no matter, we're just bringing us into the reading. All right, what are we reading tonight, you? Or maybe wondering if you went into the title blind there. Well, The Six Servants. All right, settle you down and get ready for The Six Servants. In the days of old, there lived an aged queen who was a sorceress, and her daughter was the most beautiful maiden under the sun. The old woman, however, had no other thought than how to lure mankind to destruction. And when a poor wooer appeared, she said that whosoever wished to have her daughter must first perform a task or die. That's right, that's how these usually go. Many had been dazzled by the daughter's beauty and had actually risked this, but they never could accomplish what the old woman enjoined them to do, and then no mercy was shown. And they had to kneel down, and their heads were struck off. A certain king's son, who had also heard of the maiden's beauty, said to his father, "Let me go there. I want to demand her in marriage." "Never," answered the king. "If you were to go, it would be unto going to your death." And on this the son lay down and was sick unto death, and for 7 years he lay there, and no physician could heal him. And when the father perceived that all hope was over, with a heavy heart he said to him, "Go thither and try your luck, for I know no other means of curing you." And when the son heard that, he rose from his bed as well again, and joyfully set out on his way. It came to pass that as he was riding across a heath, he saw from afar something like a great heap of hay lying on the ground. And when he drew near, he could see that it was the stomach of a man, who had laid himself down there, but the stomach looked like a small mountain. And when the fat man saw the traveler, he stood up and said, "If you are in need of anyone, take me into your service." And the prince answered, "What can I do with such a great big man?" "Oh," said the stout one, "this is nothing. When I stretch myself out, well, I'm 3,000 times fatter." "Well, if that's the case," said the prince, "I can make use of you. Come with me." And so the stout one followed the prince, and after a while they found another man who was lying on the ground with his ear laid to the turf. "What are you doing there?" asked the king's son. "I'm listening," replied the man. "What are you listening to so attentively?" "I'm listening to what is just going on in the world, for nothing escapes my ears. I hear on the court of the old queen who has the beautiful daughter." And then he answered, "I hear the whizzing of a sword that is striking off a wooer's head." And the king's son says, "I can make up use of you. Come with me." They went onwards, and then when they saw a pair of feet lying and part of a pair of legs, but could not see the rest of the body, and at last to the head also. "Why," said the prince, "what a tall rascal you are." "Oh," replied the tall one, "that's nothing at all yet. When I really stretch out my limbs, I'm 3,000 times as tall and taller than the highest mountain on earth. I will gladly enter your service if you will take me. Come with me, said the prince, I can make use of you. And they went onwards and found a man sitting by the road who had bound up his eyes. And the prince said to him, Have you weak eyes that you cannot look out at the light? No, replied the man, but I must not remove the bandage, for whatsoever I look at with my eyes splits to pieces. My glance is so powerful. If you can use that, I shall be glad to serve you. Come with me, replied the king's son. I can make use of you. They journeyed onwards and found a man who was lying in the hot sunshine, trembling and shivering all over his body so that not a limb was still. How can you shiver when the sun is shining so warm? Said the king's son. Alack, replied the man, I am of a quite different nature. The hotter it is, the colder I am, and the frost pierces through my bones. And the colder it is, the hotter I am. In the midst of ice, I cannot endure the heat, nor in the midst of fire, the cold. You are a strange fella, said the prince, but if you will enter my service, follow me. They traveled onward and saw a man standing who made a long neck and looked about him and could see all over the mountains. Well, what are you looking at so eagerly? Said the king's son. And the man replied, I have such sharp eyes that I can see into every forest and field, and hill and valley all over the world. And the prince says, Well, come with me if you will, for I am still in want of such a one. Now the king's son and his 6 servants came to the town where the aged queen dwelt. And he did not tell her who he was, but he said, If you will give me your beautiful daughter, I will perform any task you set to me. And the sorceress was delighted to get such a handsome youth as this into her net, and said, I will set you 3 tasks, and if you are able to perform them all, you shall be husband and master of my daughter. What would the first to be? You shall fetch me my ring, which I have dropped in the Red Sea. So the king's son went home to his servants and said, The first task's not easy. A ring has to be got out of the Red Sea. Come find me some way of doing it. And then the man with the sharp sight says, I will see where it is lying. And looked down into the water and said, It is sticking there on a pointed stone. The tall one carried them thither and said, I would soon get it out if only I could see it. Oh, is that all? Cried the stout one. And he laid down and put his mouth to the water, on which all the waves fell into it, and just as if it had been a whirlpool. And he drank up the whole sea till it was dry as a meadow. And the tall one stooped down a little and brought out the ring with his hand. Then the king's son rejoiced when he had the ring, and took it to the old queen. She was astonished, and says, Yes, it is the right ring. You have safely performed the first task, but now comes the second. Do you see the meadow in front of my palace? 300 fat oxen are feeding there, and these must you eat, skin, hair, bones, horns, and all. And down below in my cellar lie 300 casks of wine, and these you must drink up as well. And if one hair of the oxen and one little drop of wine is left, your life will be forfeited to me. Well, may I invite no guests to this repast? Inquired the prince. No dinner is good without some company. The old woman laughed maliciously and replied, You may invite one for the sake of companionship, but no more. And the king's son went to his servants and said to the stout one, Lost my place here. You shall be my guest today, and shall eat your fill. Hereupon the stout one stretched himself out and ate up the 300 oxen without leaving one single hair. And then he asked if he was to have nothing but his breakfast. He drank the wine straight from the casks without feeling any need of a glass, and he licked the last drop from his fingernails. When the meal was over, the prince went to the old woman and told her the second task was performed. And she wondered at this and said, no one has ever done so much before, but one task still remains. And she thought to herself, you shall not escape me, and will not keep your head on your shoulders. This night, said she, I will bring my daughter to you in your chamber, and you shall put your arms round her. But when you are sitting there together, beware falling asleep. When 12 o'clock is striking, I will come, and if she is no longer in your arms, you are lost. The prince thought, task is easy, I will certainly keep my eyes open. Nevertheless, he called his servants and told them what the old woman had said, and remarked, who knows what treachery may lurk behind this? Foresight is a good thing. Keep watch and take care that the maiden does not go out of the room again. When night fell, the old woman came with her daughter and gave her to the prince's arms. And then the tall one wound himself round the two in a circle, and the stout one placed himself by the door so that no living creature could enter. There the two sat, and the maiden spake never a word. But the moon shone through the window on her face, and the prince could behold her wondrous beauty. He did nothing but gaze at her, and was filled with love and happiness, and his eyes never felt weary. This lasted until 11 o'clock, when the old woman cast such a spell over all of them, and they fell asleep. And at the same moment, the maiden was carried away. Then they all slept soundly until 11:45, when the magic lost its power, and all awoke again. Oh, misery, misfortune, cried the prince. Now I am lost. The faithful servants also began to lament, but the listener says, be quiet. I want to listen. And then he listened for an instant and said, she is on a rock 300 leagues from hence, bewailing her fate. You alone, tall one, can help her. If you stand up, you will be there in a couple of steps. Yes, answered the tall one, but the one with the sharp eyes must go with me, that we may destroy the rock. And then the tall one took the one with the bandaged eyes on his back, and in a twinkling of an eye they were there on the enchanted rock. And the tall one immediately took the bandage from the other's eyes, and he did but look round, and the rock shivered into 1,000 pieces. And then the tall one took the maiden in his arms, carried her back in a second, then fetched his companion with the same rapidity. And before it struck 12, they were all sitting as they had sat before, quite merrily and happily. When 12 struck, the aged sorceress came stealing in with malicious face, which seemed to say, now he is mine. For she believed her daughter was on a rock 300 leagues off, but when she saw her in the prince's arms, she was alarmed, and said, here's no one knows more than I do. And she dared not make any opposition, and was forced to give him her daughter. But she whispered in her ear, it is a disgrace to you to have to obey common people, and that you are not allowed to choose a husband to your own liking. At this, the proud heart of the maiden was filled with anger, and she meditated revenge. Next morning she caused 300 great bundles of wood to be got together, and said to the prince that though the 3 tasks were performed, she would still not be his wife until someone was ready to seat himself in the midst of the wood and bear the fire. She thought that none of his servants would let themselves be burnt for him, and that out of love for her, he himself would place himself upon it, and then she would be free. But the servants said, every one of us has done something except the frosty one. He must set to work. And they put him in the middle of the pile and set fire to it. And then the fire began to burn and burnt for 3 days until all the wood was consumed. And when the flames had burned out, the frosty one was standing among the ashes, trembling like an aspen leaf and saying, I never felt such frost during the whole course of my life. It had lasted much longer, I would have been benumbed. and no other pretext was to be found. The beautiful maiden was now forced to take the unknown youth as a husband. But when they drove away to church, the old woman says, "I cannot endure this disgrace," and sent her warriors after them with orders to cut down all who opposed them and bring back her daughter. But the listener had sharpened his ears and heard the secret discourse of the old woman. "What shall we do?" he said to the stout one. But he knew what to do, and he spat out once or twice behind the carriage some of the sea water which he had drunk, and great sea rose in which the warriors were caught and drowned. And when the sorceress perceived that, she sent her mailed knights, but the listener heard the rattling of their armor, and undid the bandage from one eye of his sharp eyes, and looked for a while rather fixedly at the enemy's troops, on which they all sprang to pieces like glass. And then the youth and the maiden went on their way undisturbed. And when the two had been blessed in the church, the 6 servants took leave and said to their master, "Your wishes are now satisfied. You need us no longer. We will go our way and seek our fortunes." Half a league from the palace, the prince's father was a village near, which had a swineherd tending his herd. And when they came thither to the prince, said his wife, "Do you know who I really am? I am no prince, but a herder of swine, and the man who is there with the herd is my father. We two shall have to set to work also and help him." Then he alighted with her at the inn, and secretly told the innkeepers to take away her royal apparel during the night. When she awoke in the morning, she had nothing to put on, and the innkeeper's wife gave her an old gown and a pair of worsted stockings, and at the same time seemed to consider it a great present, and said, "If it were not for the sake of your husband, I should have given you nothing at all." And then the princess believed that he really was a swineherd, and tended to the herd with him, and thought to herself, "I have deserved this for my haughtiness and pride." This lasted for a week, and then she could endure it no longer, for she had sores on her feet. And now came a couple of people who asked if she knew who her husband was. "Yes," she answered, "he is a swineherd, and has just gone out with the cords and ropes to try and drive a little bargain." But they said, "Just come with us, and we will take you to him." And they took her to the palace, and when she entered the hall, there stood her husband in kingly raiment. But she did not recognize him until he took her in his arms, kissed her, and said, "I suffered much for you, and now you too have had to suffer for me." And then the wedding was celebrated, and he who has told you all this wishes that he too had been present for it. And that has been the 6 servants from Grimm's complete fairy tales. That's right. I'm going to fit a link for this book down in the description if you want to get you your own copy and do a far better reading than I just did. But you will see that the language is a bit old school, if you like. But that's why I'm reading it, because it's so interesting. Did you like that fairy tale? I'd say I did. It was pretty interesting. They have some shenanigans like that and a few other couple fairy tales there. But that's why we like them, right? Okay, hey, let's take us out, shall we? All right, y'all. That's been the Grimm's Fairy Tales, and as I often like to say, a kiss to your missus and a tip of my hat to your old cat. You come on back again now, you hear? You understand? You better. Hope you do. All right, now. Take care of yourselves.